This is the Unstarving Musician podcast. I'm your host, Robonzo. The podcast features conversations with me, indie music artists, and industry professionals, and it's all intended to help other indie music artists be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Welcome to another episode, my darlings, music fans. Bradford Loomis is my guest for this one. He and his wife Kimberly were featured in a prior episode back in January of 2019. I will put a link in the show notes to that. You should check it out, most definitely. It is a beautiful day in Panama. They always forecast rain here during this time of year, but it's actually quite beautiful outside. I guess partly cloudy or partly sunny. It's about 87 degrees Fahrenheit, 31 Celsius. If your day is not as beautiful, I hope it is going to be soon. Bradford has a song out called Tried to Love a Woman, which I really like. It was released in 2019, it turns out. It was written as a compliment to his prior release, Righteous Kind. That song was placed in the movie Stillwater, which features Matt Damon. That's pretty cool, right? Rock isn't Bradford's main thing, though. He admits he likes it and that he tries to include at least one rock song on each of his albums, but his primary style is more along the lines of singer-songwriter folk. Tried to Love a Woman was written with a sense of anticipation or preparedness. Bradford anticipated and prepared for a spike in interest for his rock songs because of the placement he got in Stillwater with the prior release. This is a common theme in our conversation, anticipation or preparedness. Bradford, for example, anticipated and prepared for the unexpected when he decided to up his game in video and live streaming. He has also anticipated and prepared for future tours by thinking and planning more strategically. We talk about this, doing voiceover work, managing live performance in pandemic times, his DIY subscription-based patron offer, and using various e-commerce options for fans to get his music, and more. There's always more, right? One little correction I want to make about a comment I made during our conversation, which was about a house concert date I did with Johnny Bergen. I said in our conversation that it took place in 2019, which doesn't make sense if you're listening closely to the context. It was actually February 2020. So with that, you'll get a little more context. And with that, here is me and Bradford Loomis. All right, man. Thank you for joining me for another conversation. I am excited for you. Like, I don't know where you are in the excitement curve, but I heard Tried to Love a Woman recently, and I dig it.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a trip between releasing that single and the movie placement. It's been pretty exciting. So
I didn't know about the movie placement. Please do tell.
Oh, yeah. So a big portion of releasing that specific song was so my last record, which came out at the end of 2019,
right,
had a couple songs on it that were a bit more like akin to a rock song or rock songs. And one of them, probably the grittiest tune, was a song called Righteous Kind. And so that got placed in a Matt Damon movie, the Matt Damon movie Stillwater.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so I wanted to have another song that was a little more like that, because that's not necessarily my bread and butter. It's not what I generally release, but I like going there on.
Yeah.
So I usually have one rock song on every record because I like that stuff, but I'm a pretty well-rounded musician when it comes to, I don't like to stick within a micro niche, I'm pretty broad. Yeah. So I wanted something that was a little more like that in case there was a bump, and people liked the song. And again, I didn't know how it was being used. So I wanted to prepare for all possibilities. And so I put out a song that was a bit more of a rock song that I wrote with some buddies that sound a little bit more like Righteous Kind, in case people went looking for, that song's cool, I wonder who this is, what do they sound like? And so we put Righteous Kind out, which was a super fun song to make.
And Righteous Kind is the one that got placed in Stillwater?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Nice.
we put out "Tried to Love a Woman" to be similar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I will not forget Tried to Love a Woman, but I'm excited for you obviously for that placement. And coincidentally, I just listened to well, like, he's probably interviewing everywhere, but I listened to Matt Damon on Mark Maron's podcast and learned
Oh,
about Stillwater, the movie from that one. And they didn't spoil the movie for me or anything, but they, just sort of touched on that it unfolds in an unexpected way, the character and all that. But anyway, that's really exciting. And I'm also glad that you mentioned this. It's not, you don't do a lot of it, but you like going there with the rock thing, because when I heard Tried to Love a Woman, I don't know if you recall, but I'm a rock guy. I like to try to do different things too, but
mhm.
I was like, I don't remember him being quite like that, but I dig this, and I like your other music as well. But it was fun. And since we last spoke, which I was looking up this morning, was January of 2019. I'm pretty sure you had not released, and well, actually, you just said you had not released Where the Light Ends by then at that point in
Right.
time. Well, how exciting it must have been to release that right at the end of 2019.
No, I had all these grand plans for like I'd put up I'd set up all my tours differently than I've ever done before. Uh like more fine-tuned and strategic, and I was going to be out the whole year. Um or at least a very good portion of it. I was pretty excited. I had some really cool stuff lined up, and of course, best laid plans and whatnot.
Yeah, and can you be specific about the things that you did differently, the whole fine tuning and strategic aspect of the tour, just like how, what, and why?
Yeah. So for me, with touring, so much of my favorite way to do music, the most cost-effective way for me to do music, anyways, is house shows and theater shows where I'm getting into the. Um, if you've never experienced it, it's a little bit more like that VH1 series, Unplugged, where the artists talk in between songs and explain where the song came from, what inspired it, why they're playing it, if it's a cover song, or whatever. So it's a bit more of a storyteller show. And that makes it so that I have something interesting that's unique and different, but I can do it with one person or two people. Um, I've just, it's a whole lot more cost effective to do that. I generally focus on house shows, but then when you're traveling the country and you have these big spaces in between, I just, in analyzing how I'd been booking shows, I would try to get anything just to kind of mitigate the cost of, driving 8 hours or whatever it is that day.
Hmm.
And those shows are almost always bad. They're not, they're not good. Sometimes you'll get a spot that'll give you a guarantee, or ends up being a cool spot, but a lot of times it's playing for tips, here, or it's just not a great show. So this time, what I did was I mapped out where I was going when for the whole year, lined up some basic ideas for house shows, and then reached out to all the best venues. And so keep in mind, I don't do a lot of venues. I generally book house shows first and then try to get venues. They're on very different timetables. The whole realm of booking is so much could be said about that. But the better ticket venues need you to be further and further out, like 6, 8 months sometimes.
Okay,
Wineries and breweries, you can sometimes get away with 3 to 6 months. House shows can be done in like weeks,
sure.
be really effective. So, but that was always where I was starting from, which, is the easiest to plug the gaps, because they're the most profitable for me. So this way I was able to kind of change the game a little bit, get those bigger spots that need further distance, more time to book,
Hmm.
get those lined up first, and then book house shows around them. And so that was just a different approach for me. And I was pretty excited because I got a bunch of the venues to go for it. So I'd like, spots. There's a couple spots, like, for example, I'm in Nashville, up in Wisconsin, where I got them to on the hook for a whole year, like 3 or 4 spots. So I knew I was going to Wisconsin 3 or 4 times, something like that, where I know I've got good guarantees and I can book house shows around it. So it was a little different approach.
So you basically flipped it. Instead of starting with the house shows, you started with the big venues, which are more complicated, require more lead time. Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
What an awesome tip.
yeah, yeah.
Were you in Nashville last time we spoke?
I believe so. Yes, if January 2019 we're in a different place now.
Okay.
We bought a house right before the pandemic hit. So we're instead of being in the southwest corner, we're in the northeast corner of Nashville.
Okay. I was just there,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
and I have a lot of friends through the podcast there. I didn't really have time on this visit to try and reach out and like get together with people because I was at a conference, and then I have family there too, and
Mm,
one of my brothers flew in, so it was like conference, hang out with the family, conference, hang out with the family. But I will definitely go back, and I will definitely remember you're there this time and say, hey.
yeah, yeah. Next
Let's.
time you're in town, let me know.
So the pandemic hits, tour goes out the window, but you are touring again, right? Now?
Um, it, I was able to do a summer tour. I'm not sure how much I'm going to tour during the fall. Well, the hardest thing about touring, as I'm sure you know, it requires all that lead time and planning. But like even when we got the go ahead, because my whole family's vaccinated, we got the go ahead. CDC was saying everything's going to be fine. Vaccinated people don't need to wear masks indoors or outdoors. I was like, cool. We'll put all the shows outdoors, so that way, if someone shows up who's vaccine hesitant or whatever, they're still likely going to be relatively safe. We'll encourage vaccines and masks and social distancing and all that. It just got super stressful by the end of it. And you're watching the Delta numbers change and swell.
Mm-hmm.
So by the end of it, there was a little bit of a COVID scare. Somebody showed up that was definitely not vaccinated, and I had some people coughing, and I was like, oh man, and I'm trying to be cautious because I'm going to people's houses. So I grabbed a COVID test, and one of those urgent or quick turnaround COVID tests that you have to take two of them,
Mm-hmm.
and everything's fine. I was fine, and so as far as I know, nobody attended that had COVID. So we did it well, yeah, about as well as can be expected. Kept everything outdoors, but even then, by the end of it, because it's one thing for me to not get sick or to protect me and my family. It's another thing. Like I didn't want to cause something to make people gather and then a bunch of people get it.
Sure.
Even if I don't get it. Like, I'm trying to think about not just myself is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely.
So it just got a little stressful. So I don't know how much. Luckily, one of the good things about being in the South, it's warm here all the time, or at least most of the time. So we'll probably focus on doing more outdoor stuff through the fall and do a little bit less of it. I'm doing a lot of voiceover work, and I also have a soap company. So I've got stuff that I've kind of pivoted to throughout the pandemic, that I can push pretty hard, and working on song production and getting my songs into more movies and TV shows. So
That is cool. Now, since the last time I spoke to you, speaking of getting in more placements, was that something you were already doing when we spoke, or was it something you were just starting to get into? And I ask wanting to lead into, what are the things that you've done, or what things happened that have, got you to Stillwater, for instance, or have gotten you to this place where I'm going to work a little harder on that because it can be some additional income.
so part of the problem with sync licensing is that there's so many ways to go about it. And it's like anything else in the music industry, as I'm sure you know, there's a million middlemen who are trying to sell you that they've got the golden ticket, the inside scoop to get you there. And, when you're an indie, especially, there's, I use this analogy. I've not actually counted. So these numbers are completely arbitrary. But when you're an indie, there's like 200 things you have to do, right?
That's a good number.
And you're only going to be able to get to like 30 of them. So there's a lot of stuff you're going to have to decide whether or not that's actually valuable to your trajectory, whether or not you can get to it. And maybe it is valuable, but you still can't get to it. So those are going to be one of the first things you pick up, or you hire somebody on your team to handle because you can't, that sort of thing. So you've got to kind of make a a tiered list of what you can do, what you're going to get to when you have a bigger team, what you're going to do now. So with Sync, there are ways, there's lots of things, educational tracks and people offering to train you how to shop your own songs. But like anything else, it's so relationship driven that for me, that it's almost like a full-time job, just chasing down people and getting to know them without pressure or trying to sell my music to them. And then with the hopes of eventually it'll go there. Um, that just seems also very kind of fake and duplicitous. So I'd rather hire somebody or find somebody who can represent my music well, to the people that I think would want to use my music. So then that's a, it's a different approach, hiring someone to do it, but it's also requires a lot of research and time to find the right company. But ultimately, I think it's the best thing to let pros do what pros do. I don't have those relationships, and I may never have those relationships, but somebody else already does. Okay, let's do that. So that was a challenge for me. So right off the bat, like off my first record, I got a couple placements. They've not been great, or huge money makers, but little spots add up, and it's residual income that comes in. So I've been trying from day one. I just didn't have my songs represented by the companies that were gonna be able to do much with it. And I've since refined that a little bit. I found a good company. That was one of the things I was pretty excited about with Where the Light Ends, was that I finally found representation that I thought would work really well. And so sure enough, they're the ones that placed Stillwater.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the recurring theme I hear about this aspect of the business is that it is relationship driven, and I love that you led with the million middlemen thing, because when I was reflecting back to our initial conversation, you and Kimberly we talked a lot about DIY things and middlemen, but yeah, I love the wherewithal that I've got this many things I can do, and these I can do well. Maybe someone else can do this better for me in the representation, like you said. And that's great. Speaking of our past conversation, a couple of notes I'd made myself for today is that we talked about you were building like a subscription type patronage thing without a third party platform at that time. And how is that going? Are you still doing that? Is it growing? What's the latest?
We're definitely still doing that. We have, man, it's been so helpful through the pandemic. It's grown a little bit. It hasn't been drastic, but it's fairly steady, and it's regular income when I lost a bunch of it. So that's been awesome. Having like a core group of people that are saying, "No, we've got you. We appreciate what you're doing. We believe in your music, and we want to hear more of it." Experiment. It's allowed me to get into music production more specifically, which sounds kind of funny because, like, isn't that the core of what we do? But
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I talk to a lot of people that don't touch much of that part. They're singers, and maybe they're writers in the aspect that they co-write stuff, or maybe they just write their own stuff. But sometimes they're not doing any of the recording stuff. Me, I started off, I'm not sure if I was started yet when we spoke. Maybe I was just getting the gear, but I got set up to record drums at home. I recorded my first couple singles since we last spoke. And I've always wanted to do it, just never have. And I haven't, there's so many levels at which you can do it, right? The guy who mixed for me, who's wonderful, gave me a pat on the back, said I did some great engineering, which is good. I could just make a niche out of that, engineering drum recordings, I guess, of my own. But there's so much you can do. So yeah, how is that? Has that developed along the way while you were doing the subscription-based stuff, the production aspect?
it has, yeah. So it did two things during the pandemic. I used a lot of that money from my subscribers to invest in better video, and so I have this set up. I got a better recording mic and better recording rig, so I can do my own production from top to bottom. And that's something the general public may not realize, that a lot of times artists are hiring producers to put together their albums and record that. But a lot of artists don't have all of that stuff in their own studios. Well, that's changing, and it's getting more cost effective to be able to do it. But then that's a whole other thing you have to know how to do. So
Hmm.
I've been taking some courses and learning a lot. My recordings have gotten a ton better, pretty drastic improvement. I don't know that they're where I want them to be yet, but they're close. I've gotten to the point where the whole mixing and mastering it's an element that I'm still not quite there on, but I can at least get everything tracked and put together and then give that to somebody else. That's even that's going to save me a lot of time and money. So I'm pretty excited about that. And it also gives me the flexibility to record some things that, like, I've been dabbling in pop music. I'm not a pop guy generally. It's improved my game a little bit, you know. I would say pretty drastically. And so the cutting the middleman out, I every once in a while I'll go back and check Patreon and see where they're at. And I'm still way below as far as paying middleman. I do have to have some kind of a processor. I use PayPal,
Hmm.
and you've got to have somebody taking the payments. And so
Yeah.
uh, I'm pretty. It's more than half that I'm saving. Um, and it's one of those things, like, I don't know anybody that just shops Patreon to find some artist they've never heard of. It's like anything else that's relationship. Well, if they already have a relationship with me, I'm not losing anything having them go through PayPal versus Patreon. I am gaining something by not having to pay double the expense of, not only am I paying a middleman, I'm also paying a middleman to arrange for the middleman, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of, I suppose, nerdy questions. One, what DAW are you using for recording at home?
I use Logic Pro.
Okay, cool. That's fun for me because I do too. So I get to at least throw some questions at you in the future. Um,
Yeah, do it.
uh, and then on your subscribers, I don't remember,
Mhm.
but can you share like what the back office looks like? Are you doing it all on your website? Are you using a membership plugin? Are you on WordPress? Or are you using something else?
Yeah, so I have my stuff is hosted through WordPress. Well, Bluehost, and I use WordPress. I'm vaguely familiar with it. I'm familiar enough that I can build websites. They may not be the most cutting edge websites, but I'm making them myself. So they're pretty functional. And occasionally I've got some enough friends who know how to use WordPress that if I need something specifically, I have a storefront that's built on WordPress. So you can buy all kinds of stuff, from a CD to a customized song to hire me to come out and play a house show, and everything in between. There's a bunch of stuff. But then there's also a page where you can become a patron, and I have 3 tiers. And so that's kind of broken down and explained. And then through PayPal, they allow you to take monthly payments. And so I have that set up so someone can go check it out, decide what tier is best for them, and then PayPal just draws the money every month. And I have a Facebook group, a private Facebook group that um, so if I'm releasing something to the general public, my patrons get it first. They'll get it sent to them privately, or I do a lot of voiceover work. So sometimes it's something I don't own proprietarily, but I'll send it to them first, so they get to see videos I make, they get to see recordings I do, like commercials and stuff that I'm filming for my voiceover stuff. They get kind of all the behind the scenes things of what I'm doing and what it takes to run a music career at this Facebook group. And so that allows them to interact as a community, both with themselves and with me. But then also they're getting a new song every month that I may never. And so some of the songs I'm releasing to the general public later,
Hmm.
but a decent amount of it, it's a bunch of really cool B-sides. So, like, for example, I get hired to do like demo songs for Chris Stapleton a fair amount. And I think it's just kind of the nature of my voice. So I don't own those songs. I can't release them, but I'll send them to my patrons. So my patrons get to hear them. And those songs may not ever come out anywhere, so it gives them a really cool behind the scenes opportunity to see what's going on and to hear stuff that no one else, it's very exclusive. That to me is a pretty cool perk.
Yeah, totally. So
Yeah.
kudos, because I know, so it looks like you used PayPal to be the e-commerce component on your website for both the patron tiers and for selling some of your merchandise. I know that's not super easy. Good job. And then I see you also have kind of like a maybe a bigger storefront with Bandcamp that you also well, I want to say integrated, but you also included on your website. So if people want to shop over there, I take it they maybe have a wider selection of back catalog stuff. Is that how you're using that?
Yeah. Well, and it's like anything else. You want to make it as easy as possible for people to pay you in a way they're comfortable with.
Right.
So if they're not necessarily comfortable with buying something from some dude's website, they can go to a commerce website they're more comfortable with, like Bandcamp or Amazon, or if you go to the listen section, that pulls you to iTunes, or not iTunes, excuse me, Spotify. But not everyone has a Spotify account, So then I also have the storefront where you can go to Bandcamp, you can buy stuff there, but you can also listen to it there.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also have my other storefront on the same website through a different page that is through the PayPal e-commerce. And so that's where I get the best cut. I'm not paying PayPal and Bandcamp. I'm just paying myself and PayPal. They get a little cut. But so that's where the best return is. So generally, like if somebody's asking about, hey, where do I get one of your CDs? I'll send it there. I'll send them there first.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my whole catalog is on Bandcamp, and I've got all my merch there as well. So it's a little bit redundant, but it also is a way of covering your bases in a way that maybe helps people feel, it gives them some other options, to feel comfortable.
Yeah, totally. It's a little bit of that be everywhere concept that we talk about a lot in podcasting, but or at least be as many places as you can. And I don't think I hear it enough, but like you said, maybe they're not comfortable buying from some guy's website, but they know Bandcamp or Amazon, and that's smart. So I love
Yeah.
it. And the last thing I wanted to ask you, how happy are you that you were working so hard to do live streaming in 2019 and maybe before then?
Well, it's funny because in 2018 I had a surgery, and so Kim and I looked at each other and we were like, man, we really need to put a concerted effort into diversifying, so that if I can't play for something, if I've got to take some time off or whatever, we still have money coming in. So we had already focused on improving our video, improving our ability to record and record quicker, my ability to continue writing songs and, work towards residual income. So we'd already been working on all that stuff by the time the pandemic hit. We weren't all the way set up, but we were really close. I went in, I bought a better camera. I bought a webcam, so now I can record from both directions. And so we were pretty well situated to be able to pivot to the live streaming stuff. And I think it's just a great way of helping people be involved in what you're doing.
Yeah, totally. No, I was just thinking to myself how great that you were doing that because, as you can imagine, and probably you have too, but as you can imagine, I've talked to over the course of 2020, I talked to so many musicians that were having to figure it out then.
Yeah.
And some who decided, I even had one guy he's a great songwriter. He's based out of Dallas, Fort Worth.
Hmm.
Won a lot of awards, and he toured a lot, did the house shows thing. And when it happened, he said, "You know what? I think I'm kind of done." He goes, "I had a wonderful ride, but I don't really want to do this live streaming thing. It's just not me." And I had a couple people tell me that. Now,
Yeah.
consequently, that guy that I mentioned has so he decided I'm going to go back to my world of working in marketing and I'll be able to make some music, on the side. So he's still making music, which is great.
Oh,
And
good.
the other one is he's like you. He had diverse income options that he was able to do in lieu of trying to do live streaming. It just wasn't his thing. Although
Mhm.
he does do a lot of what he likes playing for the captive audience like you do. That's been his bread and butter as well. So anyway, I just thought, well, how fortunate for you that it was already something you had down, you had even improved, and you were comfortable already doing it. So that was nice, man. Really nice. I hope it helped you guys out.
Yeah, it did. It did. We started like most people, just a cell phone live streaming in 2017, once a week, and it was generally like I did like an interview show. It's kind of a vodcast, um, but it was live. Sometimes I'd be by myself and I'd just give quick updates, especially if I'm on the road driving someplace. But it was a great way to give people an insight into what you're doing. And then turning that into the only way that you're playing was an adjustment, and it is hard. I think people tried really hard to support as many artists as they could, but thank goodness we've been able to get a little pocket of some live shows going again. So
Yeah. Well, and I forgot to share with you, I had been dreaming of doing a house show with having one of my podcast guests come down to Panama. And I actually did that in February of 2019. So I got to have the one show, and then the pandemic hammer came down. But Johnny Bergen, who's a blues artist, came down from the States with his wife, and we did a house show, also a gig on a catamaran, and we did one small venue here, and then we're all just a blast. But the house show was the best. I got to experience it. I look forward to experiencing it again someday. I'm kind of waiting. I've taken a hiatus from performing. Hadn't dipped my toes. I have dipped my toes back in a while back, and I decided, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna wait some more.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I know people can. And by the way, your website, nice job. You were saying you know enough to build a website. You did a good job. It's bradfordloomis.com. I'll have it in the show notes. And Loomis is Loomis. And you can find links to all your socials there and all the stuff you were just telling us about. So that is great. It's really good reconnecting with you. Please give our love to your wife, Kimberly. And I will be talking to you again soon about this episode. Thanks for spending time with me, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it.
Good to talk to you again.
I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks again for tuning in. The Unstarving Musician is made possible through the generosity of its listeners. If you love what I do here on the podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor or the show notes for this episode to learn about options for offering your support. This episode was powered by Bandzoogle, the platform for musicians and bands to build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle features powerful design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, and tickets, detailed fan data, integrations with social networks, and more. Plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes a free custom domain name. Try it at bandzoogle.com and use the promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code ROBONZO. Did you know you can help other independent musicians find The Unstarving Musician by following or subscribing on your audio platform of choice? Well, now you do, and it really does help. And if you have feedback, please go to unstarvingmusician.com to get all my contact info. You can text me, call me, email me, leave a voice message right there on that page. Just go down to the bottom of the page and you'll find everything you need to know. I really would love to hear any of your comments, suggestions, questions, whatever you've got. And you can find links to just about everything talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. All right, I'm peacing out. Thank you for listening and sharing with your musician friends and fellow indie music fans. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.